All right, I want to continue on this discussion with the Young Turks and Lisa Bloom.
It said throughout that I found so incredulous, and I couldn't believe that anybody would believe it, was, well, yeah, okay, I followed him, right? And the cops told me not to follow him, but, I was trying to help them, etc. But then I went right back in my car, and then as I was, in the process of that, he jumped me.
Okay, so now we understand what his understanding of what happened is, which is obviously faulty, outside of the realm of what really happened according to the case, according to all the testimony, according to the witnesses and the evidence. So let's go over that. First, he says that Trayvon or George said that oh yeah, I did follow him, even though I was told not to, but I was trying to help them, which is false statement number one. George never said that. There is no evidence that George ever went south of the T. So, where he got that, I don't know. We know that Trayvon turned south and ran. And that's where the 4 minutes starts. From that point until the time of the fight, there was 4 minutes that passed. That means Trayvon ran south, disappeared. George never followed him. So that's a fact. That's a fact, and that is a legal fact under the law. Once the jury has heard the case and they believe it, that makes it a fact. So for this guy to keep saying that Trayvon was followed by George against the order of the dispatcher is incorrect, regardless of the fact that the dispatcher had no power to order anybody to do anything. George accepted his order or his request as an order, and he didn't follow. And that's the facts. That's legally fact now. So what did the trial find George did? He went to the west. He continued west over to the street that he knows the name of the street so that he could tell the police this number, this street name, and that the police could find him. But after he was over there, he decided to move back. And that's when Trayvon confronted him as he crossed that from the east to the west towards his truck. So that's why we know that he was heading back for his truck. He certainly wasn't following Trayvon because Trayvon had run south 4 minutes earlier. He had no idea Trayvon would be anywhere in the area by then. 4 minutes? I mean, Trayvon could have run quarter mile, a half mile away easily. Walked.
Right.
But that's not how normal human beings react, right? And so
And
did
we
the
hear him
jury
getting out of the
believe
car.
did the jury believe that? And if they did, if you were the prosecution, how would you have broken down that argument?
All right. The jury did believe it, obviously. And that was one of the main reasons why George was not convicted, because he did not follow Trayvon. And these people that keep saying this over and over and over again on TV are putting themselves in legal jeopardy because there is no reason why George can't sue these people. I mean, he's got legal facts on his side. The jury has found him, whether it's right or wrong, not guilty. So, but for these people to continue smearing a man's name who is not in the limelight of his own wishes, they're in great danger legally.
I keep wanting to yell at the jury, come on!
Right.
He didn't go back to the car. He kept chasing him. It was obvious.
So
it was obvious. He kept chasing him. He did. For 4 minutes, he was chasing him? Really? That's interesting. So what'd they do? They chased him down all the way down to the south where his house was, and then around the buildings and back up the street and around the other street. It's interesting because he was on the phone with the police breathing normally for a couple of minutes after the police said, we don't need you to do that. But, this guy is talking out of his ass because he's being paid. Somebody is giving him some money and saying, we want you to support our ideas of Trayvon Martin, and here it is. This is what we want you to talk about. Here's the talking points. Here's the questions we want you to ask. And then, of course, the same people go to Lisa Bloom and tell her, here's the things that we expect you to talk about. And here's the questions he's going to ask.
In the first chapter of my book, it's inside the jury room during deliberations, and so we know now what happened. And that is that 4 out of the 6 jurors wanted to convict George Zimmerman. Even given the terrible job that the prosecution did, they felt in their hearts that he was...
Only one wanted to convict him of murder. That was Maddie, the one who paid no attention. 2 other ones thought it might be manslaughter because they just couldn't understand how you can shoot somebody and walk away. But of course, everybody had been affected by the media coverage for the year prior. So nobody got on the trial without knowing something about the case.
Guilty. But they didn't have the facts and the law to convict. And so they did the only thing they could do, which was acquit. Now, here's the most important piece of evidence.
The only thing they could do was acquit? They found it was self-defense. I mean, you know, you really, as a lawyer, you should know this
in the
stuff.
case. George Zimmerman, on videotape the day after the shooting, demonstrates the gun was holstered behind him, inside his waistband and behind him. He demonstrates that 3 times on videotape. The prosecution didn't use that at trial. Well, his story was he's down on his back, Trayvon Martin is on top of him. Trayvon sees the gun, reaches for the gun, threatens to kill him, and at that point, Zimmerman had no choice, he says, but to pull the gun and shoot in self-defense.
As I'd said in a prior video, and if you're following this in order, you know, we already know that from the angle, Trayvon, and she even pointed at the area where, you know, it's really more on the side than on the back. So it would have been obviously easy for Trayvon to see, especially when the jacket pulled up. And we'd already discussed all that. So she's trying to make the argument that mattered in the case somehow or another, whether Trayvon saw the gun. And Trayvon, if we could prove to the jury that Trayvon did not see the gun, then there would have been no reason for George to shoot him, which is ridiculous because Trayvon had bashed his head and broke his nose and blood was everywhere, and he was still mounted and felt like he was going to be unconscious very shortly. So, you know, all that, you know, blow that out. What a pile of crap of argument that is.
If that story is true, he does win on self-defense grounds. The problem is, unless Trayvon Martin had X-ray vision, there is no way he could see through the bulk of Zimmerman's body to...
So she says that he wins self-defense, unless Trayvon can't see the gun. What does that matter? Does she not understand that whether there was a gun there or not, whether Trayvon saw it or not, makes no difference. It's all about the injuries that are currently underway. He's got a broken nose. He's trying to breathe through blood. You know, I would love to see her in that position and see what she would do. Or, you know, it would be really cool if you could do like a simulator, you know, and put her in it and make her think it's real and then see what she actually does.
Gun holstered behind him. Incredibly, the prosecution didn't argue that throughout the trial. At the very, very end, after I was talking about this a lot on TV the last week of the trial, the prosecutor mentioned it, just mentioned it in closing argument, very briefly. Didn't put all the evidence together for the jury, didn't point out it was dark, it was raining, it was a grassy ground cover, none of that. Just mentioned it and moved on. So
the one question...
And as we had said before in prior videos, the dummy that was used was absolutely for that purpose, to try to make the jury see that it was probably hard for Trayvon to see the gun. That's why it was there. So, you know, she was there at the trial apparently, but I think she was either sleeping or, you know, drugged up or who knows what. You know, the mind wanders. It could be anything. How can you sit through this trial and not see all that stuff? Now, I watched it on the internet. I didn't miss it.
I'd always had about the evidence and the so-called fight was Zimmerman says he's on top of me, and so I had to pull the gun and shoot him. How does he not get any blood on his shirt if Trayvon's on top of him and he shoots him like this?
That's another good point.
And did that ever come up during the trial?
No.
Yes, it did. She says no. That's another good point. What? That's a good point? That's a stupid point. Are you trying to argue that he wasn't shot, or that maybe he was on the bottom at the time? Boy, what a terrible prosecution that they didn't even bring this up. Boy, we could have had come on, you people are morons. Of course it was brought up. Of course there was the issue of the blood splatter was thoroughly considered with expert testimony from both sides. So the hanging hoodie had one small bullet hole. It was 4 inches at least away from the body, so it caught any blood that splattered away from the body, except for whatever could have passed through the little hole that was made in the cloth, which is just about none, because the cloth opens up and then just kind of folds back. If any, they're more than likely not going to get any. And that was all part of the trial, of course, and it was very clear and laid out and went over it well. I can't imagine them not seeing that.
Oh, and that's another outstanding point. Look, Zimmerman says also that Trayvon was banging his head dozens of times.
So then she said, outstanding point. But now let's move on to something else, you know. He was banging his head. Listen, if you get your head banged one time, it feels like you're going to die. So, yeah, you're going to use your neck muscles. Of course, you're going to try to stop it. You know, it's going to reduce the injury some.
He says, on the concrete. And the defense brought in this big block of concrete in closing argument to say that could be a deadly weapon. Well, yeah, it could if his head was being banged on the concrete. The problem is the concrete was a substantial distance from where this altercation occurred. And
So right there, I mean, if you're a thinking human being, if you're a breathing, thinking human being, you have to ask yourself, I mean, if you have any concern for fairness or for honesty or for truth, if you really want to know the facts of the case and you're not just a racist stupid ass that just wants to see a light-skinned person punished for the death of a black person because that's your opinion, then you have to listen to what she just said. Let's just play it back again here. This is just good.
Good point.
And did that ever come up during the trial?
No, and that's another outstanding point. Look, Zimmerman says also that Trayvon was banging his head dozens of times, he says, on the concrete. And the defense brought in this big block of concrete in closing argument to say that could be a deadly weapon. Well, yeah, it could if his head was being banged on the concrete. The problem is the concrete was a substantial distance from where this altercation occurred. And
So she's saying that it was not on the concrete. The head absolutely was not banged on the concrete. That's it. So that makes her a moron. 100% idiotic fruitcake. Because we've got the experts saying, what do you think caused the injuries to the back of the head? It looks like contact with a rough, hard surface. You mean like a concrete sidewalk? Yeah, like a concrete sidewalk. So a concrete sidewalk could do this damage, Mr. Expert? Absolutely. Could the grass? No? Really? You mean the soft dirt and grass couldn't create those big scratches and damage to the back of his head? Wow. I guess I'm not a wonderfully high qualified lawyer like this lady, so I wouldn't be able to tell you the truth about it. Well, I'm just going to have to listen to her.
Know that because Zimmerman said after he shot Trayvon Martin, he slid out from under him. He didn't move the body. So unless George Zimmerman had a head that could extend 12 feet like a Pez.
Maybe she heard wrong. What I heard was he couldn't remember whether he pushed him off or whether he leaned him to the left or to the right. He doesn't remember. All he remembers is getting out from under him and getting on top of him to hold his arms out so that whatever it was that he was hitting him with, he would stop because he thought that he had something in his hands. Maybe a bag with a soda can in it or something that really would hurt if you got smashed with it, huh?
Dispenser. There's no way his head was being banged on the concrete. In fact, his own attorney in closing argument conceded that his claim that it was dozens and dozens of times was exaggerated. So
she just said, this is so stupid, and if you believe her, you are a fat-headed moron. I'm sorry, I'm trying to be nice here. This just really upsets me. We got to play this back. Come on now. This is just stupid. Stupid.
And the defense brought in this big block of concrete in closing argument to say that could be a deadly weapon. Well, yeah, it could if After he shot Trayvon Martin, he slid out from under him. He didn't move the body. So unless George Zimmerman had a head that could extend 12 feet like a Pez dispenser, there's no way his head was being banged on the concrete. In fact, his own attorney in closing argument conceded that his claim that it was dozens and dozens of times was exaggerated.
So there it is. This is very important. She's saying, her statement is, there's no way his head could have been bashed on the concrete. No way. Absolutely not. And then, to strengthen her argument, to back up her awesome debating abilities, she's going to bring in who? The defense attorneys to back her up. Well, how are they going to back her up? They're going to agree with her, right? That it would be impossible that he got his head hit on the concrete, right? Because she's bringing them in to support her argument. So what does she say they said? They agreed with her that he never had his head bashed dozens and dozens of times on the concrete. So she must be right. George must be guilty. What a moron! They said that he may have exaggerated the amount of times that his head was bashed. Did they agree that he never had his head on the concrete? No, because they had the experts there saying that he did get his head hit on the concrete. I can't even believe that she considers herself a legal expert. I can't believe that she thinks that she sat through this whole thing and listened with an open mind. I don't even believe it. Because if she did sit through it, she had her eyes and ears thoroughly closed and sealed off to the possibility of hearing reasonable truth.
Well, what's another word for exaggerated? A lie. Mm-hmm. It's a lie. I mean, again, a prosecutor who really wanted to win this case would have...
A lie. So he said dozens of times because to him, 3 times felt like 100,000 times. Get your head banged a few times on the concrete and see what it feels like. Obviously, he knew that it wasn't hundreds of times, although he probably felt like it was. That's why he said dozens or, many, because it hurt and there were lots. And many of them don't leave major marks. They might just leave a little scratch because of remember, there's only a little bit of skin and then there's bone. It's very painful. But she's never had it done to her. She's just a little girl that no one would ever harm. In fact, men would bend over backwards to protect her from other people that might try to hurt her. She probably has paid bodyguards even, I would imagine. So it's easy enough for her to say that George should have just continued taking the beating.
Used that very effectively in their rebuttal closing argument and said, his attorney has now just admitted that he lied about the most important part of this case, which is the self-defense moment.
It wasn't
the altercation.
A lie.
Trayvon shot right in the torso or chest, and if he
lied about the number of times that he got his head bashed. So did he have the right to kill Trayvon after 1 bash? Or 2, or 3, or 50, or 100? How many is it, ma'am? Miss Bloom? Should he have waited until he was almost dead? Or should he wait until he's almost knocked out? What is the number? What is the line? And how do we legally verify that he didn't cross the line too soon or too early? Just, that's why here in Florida, we are different than over there in California because we don't give a flying crap what the criminal's plan is. Maybe the criminal wasn't planning on killing me, but if I'm laying on the ground and he's bashing my head on the concrete, I have no other choice but to assume he is. And then that's my right to make that decision, not yours. And you're not going to put me in jail for it. All right, so you stay over there in your little left-wing California, and you guys do whatever you want to do with guns. All right, and we'll stay down here in our little Florida, and we'll do the way we like it. All right, maybe that'll work out. Oh, that's right. You ultra-leftist people who say that you're for liberty because you're liberals are really anti-liberty because you want everybody to to come down to and be whatever you decide is correct. You want to take away guns from everybody because you see a few people misuse them, and then you take these kind of situations where a man properly used a gun, was properly cleared in court, and continue to attack him. I hope he sues you, and I hope he gets a lot of money out of you, or as much as you have, anyhow, as much as you can afford. Certainly wouldn't want you to go broke, but I want you to feel the pain, and I don't see you feeling the pain that he's suffering.
Slid out from underneath him, let alone gravity. How is he not going to get any blood on his shirt? I just don't understand that, and why it never came up. Okay, so the heart of the question then goes to, why did the prosecution do this? Was it negligence? Was it laziness? Or do you have a different theory?
So I call this the blow it or throw it question, right? Did they blow the case or did they intentionally throw the case? I leave it to my readers to come to their own conclusion. I personally am not a conspiracy theorist unless I have some pretty strong evidence. So I'm not going to come out and accuse these prosecutors of intentionally throwing the case. I will say that Angela Corey took to the cameras right after her team lost the case, smiled broadly and said, "The system worked." That's a very peculiar thing. And out of the 4 prosecutors, only one of them said that he was disappointed with the outcome.
I think that she's got that a little bit backwards. I mean, I do agree that Angela Corey said that, although Angela Corey shortly after that also said that George Zimmerman got away with murder. So, you know, Angela Corey's facing her own problems because of those statements. But this is the interesting part. It seems to me that Lisa Bloom believes that the state of Florida overall must just be a racist state. And even people that are prosecuting black shootings or people where situations where black men were killed, that they're just not as interested in justice in those cases. So we're just a bunch of Florida hicks down here, a bunch of racists, and that's why Florida's growing faster than New York, and now we've just pushed into 3rd position as the most populous state in the union. So I don't see a great big exodus of black people fleeing the state because they're afraid they're going to be shot by a bunch of white people that are hell-bent on claiming stand your ground. In fact, down here, there's a lot of southern hospitality, friendly people, and skin color really doesn't play a big picture in local politics or the way people act around here. It's only on TV. You know, the stuff that we see on TV, this is what we're talking about. We look on TV and we see these people and they're bringing up racial division. They're trying to divide everybody along racial lines, you know. The black people have to watch out for the white people because of this, and the white people have to watch out for the black people because of that. And then they wonder, you know, at the end of the day, how it is that all these people are distrustful of each other based on skin color. And so then the next day they come out with a new poll and say, look, all these black people don't trust other black people, and all these white people don't trust black people. And, you know, what they could be doing if they were really interested in creating some sort of harmony in the country. You know, remember back in the 90s, some of you guys might remember that we were moving into a time where the racism was almost dead. And if you saw like a KKK gathering at the courthouse in your town, there might have been 3, maybe 5 guys in their little robes, and there might have been 500 people, mostly white people out there, you know, throwing chewing gum at them or something, you know. Really, the idea that racism was gaining traction was almost unheard of. People were laughing in the face of these racists. But then we got Obama. Everybody thought, well, this is really proof that America has evolved. We are there. We have come to a place in our society where, you know, we can bring a black man into the White House and say there's nothing wrong with that, and not once but twice, even after all the crap that he did in the first time around. But no, now we're more racist than ever. This country is supposedly the most racist country on the earth. It's just funniest thing. Anyhow, let's continue.
Of the case. Angela Corey said, "We've done our job. We put all of the evidence out there so that America can make up its mind." Well, that's not actually the job of a prosecutor. They're not a documentary filmmaker or a journalist to put everything out there and let people decide. They're actually supposed to make an argument for conviction. They're supposed to connect the dots, and they
No, they are supposed to bring all the evidence out, and if any evidence connects, if there's any evidence that connect to make the dots come together, yes, then they will draw that out. Unfortunately, every time they connected dots, it showed innocence in every single case. And she can't prove or provide one instance when that wasn't the case. I mean, go back and watch the trial. It's just the most hilarious thing. And yeah, a lot of people were saying, why did the prosecution bring those people out? Because all it did was help George. And the answer is that the law requires them to bring out all the evidence. They have to. Because if they don't, then the defense gets to bring it out, and then they get to use the bragging rights of bringing it out. This was a Supreme Court decision that they're allowed to, in closing arguments, make the argument that the state forgot or refused to bring out evidence that supports the defendant. That's why they had to bring out all this stuff, whether it supported him or not. That's just the law. Unfortunately for her, she doesn't like that apparently. God forbid that a guy get a fair trial based on the facts, instead of how good of a lawyer you have or what a wonderful legal team you can afford. This should be simple. And these people should understand that the prosecution is not there to win. They're there to get to the facts, to get to the truth. These are lawyers. These are highly paid, highly qualified lawyers, and they know and they can understand and they can look at things. And if you are the prosecution and it is your job to get a prosecution to win the case, regardless of the facts of the case, then that is a crime. That is a crime. It is illegal for a prosecutor to continue prosecuting a case after they know that the person is innocent. That is the law. So I don't know what she's talking about. It is not the prosecutor's job to win. It's not like, the Reds against the Blues and you have the two teams fighting against each other. That's not how it works. You got the defense, and they absolutely can play whatever games because that's their job to get this guy off. The state has a whole set of rules, and they have to abide by these rules very strictly. They have to provide every piece of information, whether it's good or bad, to the defense. Everything. They don't have to draw the picture to the defense, but if they draw the picture to themselves and they see that he's innocent, then they should drop the case right there. The problem is they didn't. So obviously they thought that he was guilty all the way through, even though all the evidence and the facts of the case argued against their personal opinion. Which makes me wonder how it is that they can be lawyers or how they can be part of the legal system. It doesn't seem right that we have people like this. Well, not her. She's not in the legal system anymore. She just talks on TV. But how we can have Angela Corey with her personal belief system the way it is to continue to practice law in the state of Florida, knowing that she goes against the Florida statutes. I mean, the stand your ground law said no arrest, and they still arrested George. All righty, let's play a little bit more and I'm going to cut her off.
Didn't do that. My opinion is they never believed in this case. And I have one of the expert witnesses who I quote in the book who said, behind closed doors, they all said they didn't believe that Trayvon Martin was the victim. Look, it took them 45 days, as you pointed out.
So she's telling us that all the lawyers on the prosecution team believe that Trayvon was not the victim. it's such a ridiculous argument. I mean, just ridiculous. Maybe they said that. I don't know. Maybe they believe that. But we do know that Angela Corey said after the trial that George got away with murder. What she said. So not those exact words, but she said that, that's what he got away with it. All right.
To make this arrest. It took a groundswell of public demonstrations of journalists like you saying, what's going on? He shot this unarmed kid. Why isn't he arrested?
Yeah. So this is the new standard. We're going to have the media second guess the police in every case. No, not every case. Just cases where it's a black teenager and a white shooter. Don't worry about the 10,000 cases of black on black crime since Trayvon. Don't worry about that. Just focus on, just see if you can find any more cases like this, that didn't get an arrest. That's all we're looking for. Well, maybe they did get an arrest like Dunn, but still anything like that, anything where it's a young black guy and an older white guy, and the white guy shoots the black guy. We want to see those cases. So, if you don't hear about any in the next couple months, it'll be not because they didn't happen. Because believe me, if it happens, it'll be all up and down the left-wing media.
So rather than it being nefarious, they're all racist, yada, yada, more like, well, they made us do this case. We didn't want to do it in the first place. Okay, all right, well, then this is what we'll do. We'll present the evidence and you figure it out.
They did just a perfunctory job. They certainly did not behave in the courtroom like attorneys who really believed in the case. I don't think they went home and reanalyzed the evidence at night in the way that I did as a journalist covering the case, and I noticed a lot of things that they weren't arguing. I'm not accusing them of racism. I think, frankly, they're a little different than the rest of us. And the second half of my book, Suspicion Nation, is about those issues, about implicit racial bias, for example, which about 80% of white Americans test for moderate or severe racial bias that we don't even know we have. We all say we're not racist, but we walk around and we make racial assumptions about people. About 50% of African Americans also test for racial bias against African Americans.
So this is interesting because, we're always interested in the testing. They test the population to find out whether they have racist tendencies. And 80% of the white people are racist, moderate to severe. It's amazing that that Obama gets elected with more than half. I don't know how that happened. What do you say? What do you do? I mean, how do you answer stupidity like this? How do you counter it when they're on TV 24/7 with this just so far out arguments? How do you counter it? And for George, you got to wonder, how does he deal with this kind of stuff where, they're just arguing so far outside of the case, so far, they're making statements that have nothing to do with reality, as if it was really part of the case. And the majority of the people that watch them and listen to them suck it up because they've been following these people all along. So they really believe, hey man, it's on the internet, it's got to be true, right? God. Anyhow, for those of you that study and find out for yourself, glad you guys listened. Talk to you guys later. We'll finish up the rest of this tape another day. See ya.